Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third Evolving HR webinar this week. Never done 3 in a week before, but this is the second of our Pride conversations this week. So when I say Pride conversations, we're doing it in recognition and celebration of Pride Month, but the conversation that we're having is really just about the lived experiences of LGBTQIA plus HR professionals. So I am joined today by another fabulous panel who I'm going to let introduce themselves to you. So Matt, would you like to go first?
I hate going first because I never know what to say, too much or too little. My name is Matt Ashby-Cooper. I run Ashby Cooper Leadership. I'm a DEI consultant and I help organisations create inclusive spaces ultimately through training, temperature checks, that kind of thing. Queer, gay man, working class background, got some great stories of pride through the ages. So I've been around for a while. I'm actually 51. My birthday was the other week. So I've been around.
You don't look a day over 50.
Thanks, love you.
That's so funny. Katie, would you like to go next?
Fabulous. Yes. Hello, everybody. So my name is Katie Allen and I am a leadership inclusion confidence coach. So I basically work with all sorts of leaders in all sorts of organisations to get them over the fear of saying the wrong thing. I am here representing the A in the LGBTQIA spectrum. I'm one of the tail walkers, and that means I'm asexual, which is something that most people don't know about. So that's why I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to share that with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Kate?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Kate Morgan. I am a DEI specialist leadership expert. I don't want to use the word expert, leadership consultant and coach. I'm a trans woman and I'm sure I'll jump into that in a bit more detail as we go through. And yeah, I'm just very happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming along. So, look, you've already got a "you don't look it" Matt from someone in the chat. I know Dahlia.
What you do look though.
She doesn't mince her words, so she means it when she says that. I know her. So let's start out with just tell us a little bit about your HR journey. Now, you're all self-employed now, but I don't suppose that was always the case. So what drew you to working in the HR/L&D space originally? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that. So Matt, I'll start with you.
I got tapped up for it. So I think early in my career, I was really fortunate that I had queer allies step up and recognise that I'd got something about me and there was an opportunity there for me, and let's plug you in here and give you this opportunity. And I was actually being bullied in the role that I was doing at the time. I worked for I worked for a fashion retailer in a small concession in Selfridges, and I was being bullied. And not even a lot of my experiences are all very intersectional experiences. So I'm a working class kid from Nottingham. I'd moved down to London. I'd done various different jobs, and I'm working at this concession, this very bougie fashion concession at Selfridges. And I'm being bullied because I'm not cool, and I'm not one of those gay guys, right? I'm not going out partying to all hours, and I just wasn't cool, and I didn't know the right things, and I didn't wear the right clothes and all that kind of stuff. And I was being bullied for that. And this woman who was one of the senior managers in the business basically went, "I'm not having this," and she just grabbed me and went, "Right, I'm going to make you a trainer. I'm going to show you the ropes. You've got some skills. You've got a communication style, and I really like you, and I'm just going to take you under my wing." And I really benefited from that, and that really launched my career. Thanks, Dahlia. I'll try to be cool. I'm much cooler these days than I used to be. So I really benefited from that allyship, and certainly when I was really young, I came out at 16, and I met these older gay guys who took me under their wing and were like, "We're going to give you some opportunities. I'm going to introduce you to some people and get you a job and find you somewhere to live. And we're going to connect you with people within the student space and the student union space." And I ended up working in student politics for a while before I even got into retail. And again, it was about people going, "There's something about you and you're not getting the opportunities that we think you should be getting. So we're going to take you on that journey." I would love to say that I've had allies outside of the queer community, but I feel like it's the allies within the queer community that have really supported me the most and taken me places.
Wow, I've never encountered anyone in my life who has given that level of support and, you know, just helping you out with everything like that. What wonderful people.
I was really, really lucky. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that there are even people like that out in the world. That's fantastic.
And that talks to me, it makes me feel very responsible for doing the same thing. So I think me and my husband have cultivated a community in a circle, a chosen family where we do the same thing. I feel I'm obligated to pass that on.
Oh, that's lovely. Kate, tell us about your journey through HR. You were L&D as well, weren't you, before you were?
I was, yeah. So I started out. So actually, before I moved into L&D, I was actually a teacher. So I did a PGC after my degree, and then I was a teacher for it. And I hated. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by a beautiful cat.
I am also distracted by the cat.
Sorry. So I did. No, it's gross. So I was a teacher for a year, and I think that's where my L&D kind of mind came in a little bit, because that learning piece, that kind of teaching piece, but I hated teaching. So I was a teacher for a year, and I moved into L&D and OD and all those things that go with it. But from a supportive, it's a really interesting one, because from a supportive perspective, it's been very different for me, because I kind of lived a similar journey to lots of people in my position. I kind of lived a double life for years. And therefore, to most of my colleagues, they knew nothing about the real me. And that was for, you know, that was up to about maybe 10 years. I was out to various people, but it was people who I selected, I could cherry pick, and it gave me the chance to effectively hide things away, and I could actually do that until it became too much for me, which again I think is possibly quite a common story. So I could kind of, I didn't have to hunt out allies, I think, early in my career. I think it was interesting. However, I've relied so much on the allies in the last 10-15 years since I made the call that life, you know, I had to make those changes. And actually, so I came out in my final job when I was working for someone, when I was working for an organization, and worked there. And I made the call that actually I was just so sick of explaining or having to explain things. I thought, I'm going to do this myself. So I set up my own. So actually, it's who I am has absolutely impacted what I do for my career. In a strange way, it's kind of come to a way that I didn't know it was going to go. But I was, you know, if you'd ask colleagues who I worked with 15, 20 years ago, they wouldn't have a clue who I am now. So yeah, so it's been a bizarre one. So in a very different way from that, the allies I've relied on, but you know, it's been a recent thing for me a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting. It's one of the things that we got into in the conversation on Tuesday was the whole notion of coming out. And yes, there is, you could speak for an hour about why anybody should even have to. And it's because of that. I did a post on LinkedIn yesterday because the conversations that we've been having this week have triggered my kind of loathing of the word normal, and how people expect people to explain themselves for any reason if they don't fit that normal bracket. And the whole coming out thing, somebody said in the chat on Tuesday, nobody ever asks heterosexual people if they're heterosexual. Nobody ever asks them to come out. Nobody ever asks those questions. It's just like, it's so tedious. And something that there was a lady called Cynthia was on here on Tuesday, and she has said to me before that when she first came out as trans, she was a CTO in a large organization in the States. She had to come out 700 times in her first year because the company didn't say anything or do anything. She had to, every single meeting she had to explain it all again to people. And that just blows my mind that anybody should have to talk about that aspect of themselves or anything so personal all the time like that. It really pisses me off, actually.
It never ends.
It never ends. You get used to it. It gets boring, but you get used to it. You kind of become a little bit bulletproof to it, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But,
You just shouldn't have to. But yeah. Katie, sorry, I go off at tangents all the time. But
no, the tangents are where the gold sits, though, right?
I think you're probably
we're here for
right,
the tangents, surely. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're queer, for heaven's sake. We're here for the tangent.
I love it.
That's now my new tagline.
I think it should be here for the tangent. Tell us about your journey through what you did before you were self-employed.
Yes. So interestingly, I had a very different experience to you, Matt, as well, and it mirrored much like yours, Kate. That when I very first started out, I actually worked for a petrochemical contracting company. So I worked on oil refineries for 10 years, which when I talk to people about it, everyone's like, what? I'm like, yeah, that was me. And it was that experience that got me thinking about the inclusion space, because at that point, so I just so everyone has a bit of context, I'm very new to the LGBTQIA plus party, because again, nobody really talks about asexuality. So it wasn't until I started doing the work as part of my job that I was like, well, blow me down with a feather, that's me. So my journey when it started was more through the lens of trying to create gender equity in an environment where I was the only woman in most spaces. And that got better over time. But I had this idea that even though I was kind of running a commercial operation, I really enjoyed the people stuff. And I thought, I know, like HR is where you change things, isn't it? Like working in those spaces, that's where you do. You get into policy, we're going to change the world. So I completely retrained, pivoted everything. And I genuinely believed I was going to be the best HR business partner in the world, because I could run a commercial operation. Now I knew all about HR. And I was like, sit back, everybody, I've arrived. Like the change is going to come.
Just as a very quick aside, anybody listening in the chat, have you ever thought as an HR professional that you're going to be the one that changes the world? And then you get into the world.
Well, nobody comes out of school, do they? Like, I've just done my GCSEs. Where do I sign up to get into HR? Like,
I've never met nowadays, because you can actually do degrees in it now. But when I was at school, no. Mostly people fell into it.
Exactly. It's almost like a calling, isn't it? Of like trying to kind of be invested in people in business. And that was exactly where I came from. And like, I don't want to, I've learned now not to diminish myself. Like I was excellent at my job. And I was also frustrated as F, because
you can swear here. It's fine.
Frustrated as fuck, right? Because I was the custodian of all of the policies that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I was there, the mouthpiece for having to get people to do stuff that I was like, I don't think this is right. I think we can do something better. And because then I no longer had a massive commercial budget, I was essentially a service function. My opinion was, I felt less valid. So I was like, hang on a minute. So that's kind of how my journey unfolded. And then I was presented with an opportunity via redundancy, where I could literally put my money where my mouth was and say, okay, I want to work with the organisations that want to do this properly, that want to invest in a change management process that is beneficial for people. And then through all of that work, doing more deep learning, I then learned more about asexuality, and I was like, well, there it is. Now my life makes sense all of a sudden. And I'm like, oh, this isn't however back to normal, right? No such thing as normal. I only knew what my experiences were.
Because the opposite of normal is abnormal. The opposite of ordinary is extraordinary.
That's much better. Extraordinary, I can get on board with. And I was thinking about it yesterday when I was writing that post. And I think when people use normal, they usually mean majority, or they mean like me. And we're comfortable with people like us. So anybody that isn't like us, it's like, oh, that seems a bit scary. But like you say, the opposite of normal is abnormal, and that is a horrifying word to use to apply to anybody for any reason. I've just seen a comment from Alan in the chat that's made me to try not to laugh. I fell into in-house recruitment as my manager could hear me from the other side of the open plan office and thought I had to give him a cab. Alan, I feel like I need to get on a call with you because you sound like my kind of people. I love the mouthy ones that are loud. They're always my favourites. That was always me. Can you share a time when being LGBTQIA+ has either made your work experience more challenging or easier? And I'll come to you first on that, Kate.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. So I was thinking about this. So there's an example, I guess. And I don't know if it really answers your question, but I'm going to give you an example anyway. I was working in the US relatively recently, actually, and it was Transgender Day of Visibility fell on the same weekend as Easter weekend. So, and the company I was working with at the time, effectively had offices all over the US, including down in the South in the religious belt. sorry, I'm loath to say religious, but where people often are more religious. And I had a direct email to me, and basically saying, and this was about, maybe 6 months before I came out of work, basically saying, effectively, this should not be happening at the same time as a religious festival. And using all sorts of really, really nasty language I'm not going to repeat around. Effectively, it was the whole LGBT community, really, LGBTQIA community, but particularly focusing on trans. And I just wanted to throw everything on the floor and effectively, out myself in front of everybody, because I felt so passionately about this. I didn't, but what I did do was I effectively via one route got to him and effectively got his manager to talk to him about, this is for everybody, this is the reason we do it, etc., around inclusion. And if I'm honest, it was that moment that made me decided that I wanted to come out and do something about it.
Wow.
And so therefore, it was quite literally that. So it sounds like a slightly trite example, but it hit me so much in the heart, so much personally, and so much I felt helpless being in the identity I was at the time. And I thought, I can do something about this. And you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to do it. So I did. And so it was that moment, absolutely, that kind of was my pivot. So it may not be answering your question, but it's something that is so driven why I've done what I've done.
I think it does answer my question, but it's like it made your career trajectory change.
Completely. Yeah. And my life changed. I mean, it was a life-changing moment.
Wow.
So it will always stick with me. So I've almost got to thank that guy in a way for doing what he did in a strange way.
In the Deep South.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't thank him. Don't get me wrong. I would throw him off the nearest building, but at the same time, sorry, I wouldn't throw him off the nearest building. But at the same time,
around the head with a frying pan or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it really was. It was that important to me. So again, it's just it's really impacted me. So yeah.
It's amazing, actually, isn't it? And then people don't realise that what they think is a throwaway comment based on their bigoted opinions, the impact that can have on somebody else reading it. And you weren't probably even a colleague that they worked with every day.
No, and it's interesting. The bigoted opinion thing is really interesting, Kirsty, I think, because that's his opinion. And there's a little bit of me that kind of says, I don't agree with it. And I do think it's bigoted, but it's his truth. And therefore, there's a bit of me that kind of thought, I want to use this as an opportunity to give a different side of a story, however much it may not be listened to. That was the opportunity I saw as it a chance to give. And don't get me wrong, I do agree with you. In my opinion, it's a bigoted opinion. However, I do also respect that people, I try and respect that people see things in a different way. So
I feel like you are a more gracious woman than I am.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
I get angry on other people's behalves, but anger doesn't help. You don't articulate yourself so well when you're angry. So some of the stuff I've seen on LinkedIn recently and on different social media recently, particularly in light of the Supreme Court judgment, has just made my blood boil. And I don't engage. I will talk about what I think and I will support in the way that I want to support, but I'm not going to engage with people because I don't think the ones that are posting really vitriolic stuff, I'm not sure you're ever going to change those views anyway. Certainly not from a comment on Facebook. So it's easier not to go there, but gosh, thank you, Kate. That was really powerful. How about you, Matt? A time that you can think of where being a gay man made your work experience either easier or more challenging?
I really struggle with this one. So I'm autistic with ADHD. And so for a lot of the time, I have taken people at face value. So that perception of when I might have been microaggressed or when things are being made more challenging because I'm queer, I don't think I've necessarily been aware of that. And I know that certainly having conversations in the past with people talking about their experiences of homophobia in the workplace, I haven't necessarily felt it or seen it because I take people at surface value. And only recently, so I'm recently diagnosed about 3 years in now. And not long after I had started to really explore what this meant for me, I feel like me taking that mask off has also made me start to interrogate and question those experiences that I have had and what actually was going on there, and started to be more aware of it when I see it. And similarly to you, Kate, I had an experience a few years ago, literally just before I set up my own business. And I was going through a redundancy process. My husband was going through a redundancy process. I got this process that I was in the midst of for a chief people officer role. And I'd interviewed with the CEO several times. I'd interviewed with the head of marketing. I'd interviewed with various different people around the organization. They love me. I love them. We're talking about, you need to tell me what you need in your package. We're going to get an offer out to you on Monday. You just have to meet with the chairperson on Monday morning. It's a virtual call. It's just a cursory, because you're going to be coming in at board level and he needs to just eyeball you. But we should get an offer out to you by 2:00 on the Monday afternoon. And I sit down at this virtual call with the chairperson. And I think partly because I've never really experienced blatant homophobia, and I've always really encouraged people to be authentic, and I've always felt that I've been able to be relatively authentic. I am me, and you will get me on a call with you, hands flapping around, chat, tangents left, right, and centre. You're going to get me. And so I've sat down in this call and we start talking, and it's almost like he forgot that he was on a face-to-face call. I can see your video and you can see mine.
Oh, no.
And just recoils. Look on his face of disgust. And his face is literally held like that for a good 10 minutes, no joke. And I'm trying to wrestle this conversation back, and he's just not buying what I'm selling whatsoever. And ultimately, I get a call from a recruiter later on in the afternoon saying, I don't know what happened. Don't know what happened. There's no offer for you. And in that moment, I had this, and I could see it, and I knew exactly what was going on. I could just tell, I am too much for you. You can't deal with this brand of me. And that was the catalyst that made, Katie, we all know what happened, right? And that was the catalyst for me to go, do you know what? Fuck you. My livelihood is not going to be dependent on your biases anymore. I'm not having that. I'm going to do this for myself. And that was the catalyst that made me go, I'm setting on my own business. I'm going to go ahead and do this for myself. So similar to UK in that negative experience really spurred me on to go, I'm taking control of my own destiny going forward, and I'm going to do stuff that has more of a positive impact. But at the time, it was recognizing what was going on in that moment that was really quite hard.
And that's lovely. So we've got, with you and with Kate, you've got two determined and gutsy individuals who've taken that experience and turned it into a real positive. But you can imagine how for so many people, it would just be absolutely crushing. And I'm not saying it wasn't crushing for you at the same time, but you've both taken something really positive out of it. But there must be so many people that happened to that haven't been able to turn it into something positive. I've just realized that I must have sent my link out to a number of people, because I'm not making any of those Kirsty Baggs Morgan comments in the chat. That's other people who are signed in as me. So if you're coming up in the chat as Kirsty Baggs Morgan, please say who you actually are, because
I thought you were like gloriously multitasking. No, this is witchcraft.
I've done this before, and I've given them my link. So yeah, oops. How about you, Katie? Has there been any? I mean, you said yourself that it's only been a fairly recent.
Yeah, in the last few years. So
not change, but realization.
Yeah, eye-opening moment. So I guess indirectly no, but actually what I would say is kind of almost the other way around, in that my experiences as a queer person have been impacted by the lack of education and the lack of conversation in my workplace about queer experiences. So actually, as a society and also as an engaged employer, more of these conversations been happening, it wouldn't have been for me to be doing all my own work to be like, oh, flipping heck. I would have arrived at that much sooner. I just have to apologise. My cat's very vocal at the moment.
Your cat is more than welcome to join in.
She's also angry about this whole state of... Come here. So I think actually, had there have been more education through school, but we didn't, because Section 28, more education in society, but we don't because nobody talks about it, more education in the workplace, which luckily now there is more available. But actually, I feel like it's the same, but just the opposite way around. I could have got there a lot quicker. I could have been myself more. And I would have been happier. I would have been a better person within all of the things that I did.
Yeah, no, that makes an awful lot of sense. It's an interesting one. The next question I was going to ask is around feeling that you're expected to be the go-to for everything inclusion in your organization. Now, the irony here is that all three of you are actually now DEI experts and self-employed doing that kind of work. But were you ever expected to have a view on inclusion or on things like gay rights or pride just because of who you are when you were employees in organizations? Because the example I used on Tuesday, and I'll use it again now, it's not, it's a race-related one, but I have an Indian friend who worked for a law firm, and they put her on the cover of all their diversity literature, like actually had it printed before they even said, they never told her. They never told her. And she was like, oh my God, they've just picked me because I'm brown. And they had, but they just assumed she wouldn't mind. And then she said, now I've got people coming to ask me questions about race discrimination. I just want to do my job. Like, I really don't want to have to be part of that. So I'm just interested in whether that has, any of you have ever experienced that. And I'll ask you first, Kate. But I think, Kate, you said that you only came out when you went self-employed, didn't you?
Kind of, yes. But interesting that retrospectively I have. So I've had the last employer that I did work for, they have come to me, as bloody everybody has since the Supreme Court decision. They have come to me, and so everybody who I've had contact with who knows me suddenly thinks I'm going to be the person with the expert opinion on this because I've got an HR background and I'm trans. And yes, I have opinions quite clearly, but at the same time, it's so I've kind of almost retrospectively have become the go-to person, but not through my own kind of goodwill. But anyway, yeah, so a little bit, but not during my time working. So no.
Okay. How about you, Matt?
Oh yeah, totally. And I feel like, obviously not when I was a baby gay and I was in my junior roles, etc. But as I've started to move up the ladder, yeah, absolutely. And the challenge is that it's always extracurricular work, right? It's always do your day job, hit your targets, smash those things we need you to smash. Oh, and can you do this as well? And I always talk about, like I talk about this in training quite a lot. You know, you've got the bag of bricks on your back, which is the oppression, the weight of the world that you face. You've got the mask that you're expected to carry and wear of professionalism, etc., and what's corporate and all that kind of nonsense. So I'm carrying this bag. I've got this mask here, and you want me to do what now? Oh, why don't you just tuck that under my arm and I'll see if I can make that work too? Like, no. That work needs to be done by other people who are equipped to do it, and I think unless you're in a formal role, and beyond HR as well, because quite often all of this stuff just lands on HR's plate as well, and it needs to be integrated in the business and woven throughout the business and made responsibility of senior people within the organisation. But quite often it gets lumped with HR, and if there's a person who's from a minority background in there, it gets lumped with them and they're supposed to be the expert and the talking point. And my lived experience is that of a gay man who for most of his life has transcended his working class roots and lives a very privileged little life. And that comes because of my gender, and it becomes of my ethnicity and all that kind of stuff, right? So to ask me to be able to talk to the lived experience of everybody else in the queer community is a nonsense.
Yeah. It's too broad for any one person to take that on themselves. Yeah. It's like it's
just lazy of organisations to ask it.
It's really lazy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I always remember the. Did any of you ever used to watch 30 Rock?
Yeah.
They had a guy in the writing team who was black and gay, and they used to call him Toofer. That was his nickname.
Oh my God!
Like, yeah, no, that was the joke. They called him 2 for 1. Because and they used to get and he used to just roll his eyes, and the joke was on the managers that were saying, oh, we can roll you out for that because you're a black gay man. But I just loved that they called it out, and they were really blatant about it, like, because you do see organizations do that. Like the whole, like, oh look, there's a box we can tick, we'll get that person we'll put them on a banner and make them do everything for us. But I think it's very easy for people to assume that just because you have a certain trait or characteristic, or because you identify a certain way, that you're an expert on it, which is crap, to be honest, because you've only ever really got your own experience. Unless you've gone and studied it at length, then you've only got your own experience. So it's crazy why we would think about that. So I remember when I was diagnosed with ADHD, people assumed that I would start coaching others, and I was like, oh no, I don't even know how to run my own life, let alone help other people run theirs. Like, no. Yeah. Katie, how about you? Is that ever?
Yeah. So again, not directly in that way, but I think just to build on what you said there, Matt, I think just to revisit again, there's a piece about experts, and then there's a piece about beyond HR, and I think that is a vital understanding for anyone to really get, isn't it? That one of the sessions that I run specifically for HR people is DEI is not an HR problem, because it is a foundational business imperative.
Yes.
And I believe that with every fiber of my being. Well, it's a societal imperative, quite frankly, but when we deal with organizations. And I think so people did always come to me as the go-to person on this stuff, but it wasn't because I was LGBTQIA plus, because I didn't know and they didn't know. But it was because I was always scratching at every thread that was dangling. I was pulling and follow it, and I wouldn't let things go. And I know now why I work really well as a self-employed person, because I have an absolute pain in the arse to be employed by anybody, because I won't let things go if I don't understand it doesn't make sense, and I am going to challenge. But actually, I was very fortunate that whilst I guess to some extent the organisations I worked with really liked that, because I'd pick things up and run with it and create things and deliver things, and in some regards, that has really built the foundations of the work that I do, because within those roles, I was given the freedom to become as best I can an expert through my own lens. But also there was that tipping point when, my knowledge was deepening and I was really understanding the things that needed to change. And it was like moving beyond them ticking a box by having me doing stuff to then me saying, well, no, this is a systemic problem. I can't just do your lunch and learn on this. We need to bring someone in, because this is a change management process. We need to bring someone in who really understands this.
Yeah.
It is beyond me. And that was interesting. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. If there's a need for this, then I will be the beyond me person. Like, it's currently beyond me, but it will not stay that way.
Yeah. Oh no, that's good. It's funny. It's similar to the conversation we had yesterday, Matt, isn't it? Around neurodiversity, that whole, it being a wider problem, it being everybody's responsibility. And that's what Alan's just put in the chat as well. It goes hand in hand with the Race Equality Matters message of it's everyone's business.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
Yeah. I mean, humans are human all of the time, 100% of the time. And and again, back to there's no such thing as normal, only what we've normalized.
Yes. And
that's different for all of us. So if we're not all contributing and we aren't all being kind of represented, then it doesn't. What moves, what changes, and that and I had just as a tangent, because that's what we're here for. I had a really interesting networking conversation last week with someone who was head of a sales team, and when I told him what I did, he went, "Oh, we don't need any of that stuff." And I said,
God. Okay.
"Well," I said, "Okay." I challenged this. He said, "If I could have a session with your team, and from a sales perspective, I could teach them to connect with people almost instantly, regardless of their background or regardless of where they're coming from, just by having greater empathy and an understanding of different people's frames of reference, what do you think that would do to your sales outcomes?" And he was like, "Oh shit." I'm like, and I hate the fact that I have to pitch that to you in that way.
Yeah.
But that's why it's imperative to your business. Like, you want to connect with your customers are humans, and they're human all of the time as well. Like, why,
It's one of those things. So bear with me on this, because this is going to sound like a ludicrous tangent. DEI as a label has got the sort of bad press that the word vegan has. I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 8 years. Everybody recoils when I say the V word, because they think it means I'm going to start lecturing them. People don't want to buy vegan food, but you call it plant-based and everyone's fine, because that doesn't have the same connotation to it. And I feel like DEI as a label is struggling with that at the moment. But when you just explain what it is, like you've just said, completely different. And
so I kind of feel like DEI has a bad press and has a bad name and a bad rep with companies and organizations that don't give a shit and never were really going to buy it anyway. And repackaging it as something else ain't going to make them buy it. Because I work with a number of clients that get it and want to do it and don't care. And they're like, no, we hear those voices over there. We already know why it makes sense for our business. We're already bought into this.
Yeah.
Let's keep trucking. Let's keep doing what we're doing. And and I see a lot of chat around, we need to change it. I saw somebody on LinkedIn recently that said, oh, I've rebadged it and I've called it this new acronym and blah, 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 blah. And instead of doing this, we're going to focus this new way. And I was like, there is nothing new in there. There's nothing new that I don't talk about already. All you've done is call it something else. Can we stop pandering to that conversation and just crack on doing the bloody work?
Isn't that the same as
It drives me insane.
personnel to HR to people and culture?
Yeah.
And honestly, just to really hammer your point home, Matt, I put a post out recently as well on the CIPD's new, they launched their new report, didn't they? And this is the future of like what we're going to do in DI. We need to be more business focused.
Yes.
And I read that and I went, any organisation that was not doing those things already, what the fuck were you doing? Because you weren't doing.
That's how you and I became connected, Katie.
Yeah.
Because because Charlie Hart she shared that report, and it's a load of crap.
Oh.
Have you seen it, Kate?
It is, but to your point, then,
I have, yeah.
People doing that work like that, and that's where it concerns me. In that there are people who are calling themselves like DEI experts, and like they're just faffing about on the surface. And it's like, if you're not doing that stuff, you're the people that are creating not the narrative, but making it easier for people that want to dismantle DEI to do that, because you're faffing.
It's interesting. I'm still working with quite a few North American clients, and I notice a difference in the EDI, the use of the phrase EDI there as it is over here. Over there, it is, people are terrified of using the word now. Absolutely terrified. Sorry, the acronym now. Because, I used to work with a consultancy who were basically told you will lose all federal work if you have an EDI policy. So they are literally stripping everything out. Over here, it feels less of an impact, but the problem is, what is it? The US sneezes, we all get a cold. It's that kind of thing that's happening down the line. So I think it eventually is coming here, and I think we just need to be ready. And I try and I've almost given up fighting it, and it's a case of, I find the reframe I often use is say it's just around treating people fairly. And if you talk about a conversation where people say that, suddenly this light bulb goes on and say, well, why would I not want to treat someone fairly? And then you can have a more decent conversation rather than using kind of this. And I am the most woke person you will ever come across. I wear it like a badge. I'm proud of it. But at the same time, people see this as that, and suddenly the press get this, and it all escalates and becomes something. So I think if you can have these conversations and to talk about fairness, suddenly people, oh yeah, of course I will do, and what have you. So that's
exactly the thing. It's like, we all on this call know that woke just means treating people fairly and awake and aware of differences, seeing that kind of. Yeah, absolutely. But it's been weaponized as a word. It has been
intentionally.
Yeah. And you're right, Kate. DEI is a slur in the States. You're a DEI.
Yes.
Yeah, completely.
Oh, DEI has been blamed for helicopter crashes in the States.
I talk about authenticity a lot. Like, let's create an environment where people can be their authentic selves, because if they're authentic, all of that energy is channeled into their job. Whereas if they're inauthentic, they have to wear a mask, they have to carry that bag around. That's energy that could be going into the job.
Yep.
And I think teams and organizations and individuals get that message that actually, it's important that I'm able to be myself, and I can then see why it's important for you to be yourself. You're right. I'm digging my heels in. I know I am, but you're right. I think I'm going to have to evolve and change and shift with the times. But it bloody frustrates me that our energy is directed towards channeling that and combating that instead of actually cracking on and doing the job.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, in terms of your work, each of you, have you noticed a change in appetite since everything that's happened across the pond? You have?
Yeah.
In what way?
A lot of my workload has dropped off a cliff.
Wow.
I'll be like this year specifically, it's been really tough. And again, I think it's because, you take a hard position, right, where it's like, I won't do one-off unconscious bias training. I won't faff. I only work with organizations that want to make significant structural change. And so for me, it's almost proved like a natural filter, because people that would have come with inquiries and we maybe would have got somewhere down a route and maybe they wouldn't have, like, that stuff doesn't happen now because people feel like they've been let off the hook. So it's a natural filter. So when people do come to me, it's more likely that we will work together. But I feel the difference because people are hesitating. And I think it is the political climate that's shaping that, because they're just, and not just through a DEI lens, I think we're just not sure anymore about what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Like all sorts of government policies are up in the air. So actually just spending money on anything is making organizations more selective.
Yeah.
And I think they want to be really clear that there's, about how does this meet specific business needs? And so again, it's the positioning thing, isn't it? It's about being able to be really clear to say, the statistics tell us, we know that people will leave bad managers, not bad organizations, more often than not.
Yeah.
Why do you not want your managers and leaders to be able to be empathetic and engage with people and to lead well? Like, because this is all we're talking about. This is what we're giving them the skills to do.
You're 100% right. And I feel like we could probably do a 7-hour webinar on why organizations let their managers get away with acting like dicks as often as they do. Because we have all worked in those organizations where there has been several managers who are just absolutely toxic and no one does a damn thing about it. And I don't think I will ever understand why CEOs and senior leadership teams don't care. I don't get it. It cannot just be about money. Maybe it is. Maybe it is just about money.
I think they do care, but it's about balancing priorities. And again, they don't understand the intrinsic link between this thing links to this thing links to this thing. Yeah. And actually what I will say is the counter argument to what I've just said is what I've seen an increase in is people who have had employment tribunal claims or dropped an absolute bollock. And then they come to me and they want me to help them unfuck it. And it's like, okay, well, this is what I've been saying. If you do the work up front, you don't have the big fine at the end.
That's a really good point. Because then you're getting knee-jerk reaction clients rather than proactive clients who actually want to run a better workplace and a more inclusive workplace.
And I think for a lot of organisations, it's money today versus money tomorrow. So looking after my money today means I can't fire that boss who's a dick because they're bringing the money in, or I can't fill that hole right now. So I need to retain that individual, despite the fact they're problematic, despite the fact they're an issue, because it's money today. Only when they've lost money today, to talk to your point, Katie, do they go, shit, I don't want to lose money tomorrow because I've just lost money today. Let's do something about it. Larger organizations where they're able to think longer term and they need to be less reactive, I think tend to be the ones with me right now who are going, we're already on this journey. Let's keep going on this journey. Whereas smaller organizations that can't necessarily afford that investment up front or are too busy fighting the fires in front of them, they're the ones that aren't necessarily coming. I never thought I would miss the rainbow washing. It's been really telling.
It's so noticeable this year.
The rainbow washing anymore. I think as a community, it's now on us to go, okay, so you've shown us who you are. Well, we won't buy from you anymore. We won't want to work for you anymore. We won't support you anymore. We're going to go with the companies that do work for us. There was a meme that came out that I saw the other day that was like, if you're queer, remember, the Barclays and I can't remember who else it was, and the Absolute Vodkas won't be there to have your back. And I had to jump in and go, hold on 1 second. You're right about Barclays, you're right about Facebook and Meta, but the likes of Absolute have been with us since 1981. They were with us throughout the whole of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. They were putting their brand in bars, they were sponsoring our events, etc., when nobody else would touch us. And that brand has my loyalty. And I think that knowledge around those organisations and how they support us.
What is the issue that people have come up with about Absolute then?
No, it was just a meme that was just like,
right, okay,
collecting these brands that supposedly support the queer community and then don't, and actually Absolute do. And I think we need to educate ourselves around that and recognise who does have our back and who doesn't, and let's start putting our money where our mouth is. There's enough precedent that shows that where the pink pound chooses where it spends its money, we can have a direct impact on some of those organisations and how they act.
Yeah.
I'm on a one-woman crusade to stop people buying any Harry Potter things.
So
it's something which I'm doing. I'm encouraging everybody I know to stop their kids reading them and everything like that. So similar to what you've saying there, Matt.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
It's let's not get into that. But I find
let's get into it.
Okay, I find aside from the hatred that's there, which is horrific, why is that the hill that she's chosen to die on? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, why does that bother you so much?
I think it talks to a much bigger issue around why we have the left and right, for want of better terminologies, really fighting against one another. I think we live in a climate of fear. If I think about J.K. Rowling, I can understand why she does what she does. Like, she's a domestic abuse survivor. She's faced violence, and for her there is a genuine fear there. I get it. I think she's directing that flawed. I think she's using a platform in a really dangerous way. I think I think it's awful, absolutely awful, the way that she's galvanized a community against trans people like this. It's fucking awful. It pisses me off, but I can understand it. And I think if we're going to make any change, we're going to take people on that journey with us, we've got to get to the root of the fear and understand why people believe what are you trying to protect? What are you scared of? Because until we can get to that moment and talk to one another as humans about that, we're not going to be able to get people over the line.
Have any of you read the book 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have by Deborah Frances White?
No,
because
I've read bits of it. Yeah,
I thoroughly recommend it. And there is a section in that book. I'll stick it in the chat as well in a second, so people get it. 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have by Deborah Frances White. And there is a section in there where she talks about, J.K. Rowling and this kind of whole. It would be termed the trans debate, but we know there's no debate about trans people, so let's just take that out of the way.
Yeah.
So one thing that she called out is when we think about what we would classify as the right, the capacity to unite several groups who don't necessarily have a shared cause, but unite them around a shared purpose that moves them towards their own shared cause when they're different. And what she called out there is I think it was in 2013, when France, the Netherlands, and maybe the UK as well, took steps to legalize gay marriage, or was it civil partnerships? I can't remember which order it went in. That was something that Christian fundamentalist groups were not okay with. But when they knew that they couldn't get the sentiment to roll that back, so their next target was, well, actually, there's still a lot of question marks around transgender identity. That's what we're going to chip away at. And all of the funding then went into bringing together various different groups against transgender communities, because they knew if they could start rolling those rights back, it's only a matter of time before they can get to their end game. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I think that's what we're seeing with JKR as well, in the sense that she is a puppet, because, like you say, she's got her own fear-driven cause at the heart of this. She again, back to frames of reference, she genuinely believes what she believes, and she's got the perfect platform to be the spokesperson for other people's gains, and they're just going to feed her all the stuff that they need. They're going to, and she's just doing it.
And I think one thing we need to acknowledge as well is that intersectionality piece around those issues, because Nigel Farage was just talking about repealing abortion rights. There is a real connection between women's rights and queer rights and trans rights, etc., and we need to look at that intersectionality piece and go, we need to get on board as the queer community. We need to be championing for women's rights as far as abortion rights are concerned, because they're not just coming for us in isolation, they're coming for a raft of different things.
They're coming for us all. I mean, fundamental, like that's it. It's just that they are much better at organising.
Which is bizarre, because we used to be so good at it.
But our systems are also set up to make their agendas more successful, like patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism. Like, it's all weighted in their favour as well. So
we're going deep today.
We are, and I just love that the backtrack is Katie's cat the whole way through. Obviously has very strong opinions on this issue as well.
She's got very strong opinions.
But lots of strong opinions. We've got about 10 minutes left, so let's finish.
And I have 3.
You've got 3. Okay, let's finish on a really positive note. And Matt, tell us all about your pride
Ooh.
Your pride hobby, I suppose, is what I'm now calling it.
I mean, it's not even my pride hobby. It's really my
It's
hubby's
your husband,
pride
isn't
hobby.
it?
Yeah, he's obsessed. Joel finds the joy. That is his mission. He loves the joy. He talks about the fact that a glitter bomb made him gay. He was at a dance party, and there's loads of gay guys around him, and this glitter bomb goes off above his head, and suddenly he's like, you know what? I do fancy boys, and it was this light bulb moment, and he was gay ever since. It's just bizarre. So he seeks the joy. So it's meant that we've been to various different prides around the world. To be honest, we've been to a lot of different pride events. One of the most fabulous that I enjoyed the most, that really sticks with me. We were down in Cardiff visiting some friends. And they were like, oh, it's Barry Pride this weekend. Do you want to go? And not even Barry Island, like Barry, the little village on the mainland, right? So we're like, yeah, of course we'll go. So we go down to Barry, and it's this little town, and there is a little high street. And throughout the centre of the high street, you've got all these different stalls all the way down, and every single shop was decked out, going crazy. And everybody was really into it, and the shops are like giving away food and giving away drinks and it was just this community celebration. It was beautiful and wholesome, and just took me back to what pride should be about, not commercial, and it was just lovely and wonderful. And we've wandered down this street, and as we get down to the bottom, you've got the puppy area, where you've got this little pen and these leather boys in their puppy outfits. Now, I love that, right? I'm there for that as far as pride's concerned. Pride is about diversity. It's about different lifestyles coming together. It started out like that. So this sanitization of pride, I get in my feelings about that, right? I want to see some edge. I want to see some difference and some challenging communities, etc., represented. So I'm loving this puppy pen at the end, and so these leather boys playing in their puppy outfits, and there's this little family of a straight couple and their two little kids. And they're obviously just wandering around, kind of caught up in this pride piece. And the kids are like, oh, mummy, daddy, can we play with the puppies? And they say yes. And they end up putting them in the pen to play with the puppies. And there's me and my husband going, oh, my God, don't pull the tail. Don't pull the tail.
I love it. Oh, God, I absolutely love it. That's just wonderful. And I know you've got to go, Matt. So that was the perfect way to end.
Yes, I'm out.
So much for stepping in at short notice to do this today.
And thanks, everybody. It's a great time. So thank you.
Katie, is pride something that do you get involved? Do you go along to any of the events? Is it a big thing for you?
I do, as much as I can. Interestingly enough, in my local region, our prides are less successful. So I'm out in the east of England. So, you know, I'm surrounded by the fen folk, and we'll happily celebrate strawberries and straw. Less cool with pride, so that's interesting for me. But I certainly I think I got involved more before I realized I was queer, actually, which is quite funny. But actually also, I mean, I know we're trying to uplift, but I think also now I realize my aceness. I experience more hostility from within the community than I do outside of the community. So I'm still trying to figure out how open I can be, because generally most people who are straight are curious because they don't know what it is and they just want to ask questions and understand. I sometimes get resistance from other LGBT people who maybe just don't see it as queer enough. It's not a real problem. It's, you know, it's you don't have the right to be here. So for me, it's really dependent.
I've heard a lot of bisexual people say that as well, that they get that kind of prejudice from within the LGBT community. But yes, I mean, I mean, you are the first asexual person that I'm aware of that I have met. And I like to think that I have quite a diverse range of people in my network, but it's not something I was ever aware of before, and that's just me. But yeah, that's it's a real shame. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, just because people aren't heterosexual, that means that they must all band together and all get on like a house on fire. But with any minority group, when you hear about dissent within that community, that's always a real shame, isn't it? It's
yeah.
really
And I also want to temper, and it's back to the point you made, Kate, earlier, which is I also have sympathy, I guess empathy, because I do understand that some people might feel that the more attention, when we broaden our alphabet and we include more people in our queerness, I do understand how people can feel that that's diminishing of the attention that, and I don't face discrimination in the same way as well. It's different. So I want to say that I appreciate that, and I want to support that, and I also need space, because actually, if people really understood what it meant, I think they might feel differently.
Yeah, that's fair. And Kate, I mean, I know the trans community has had all sorts of hostility and discrimination from within the LGBTQ community as well as outside of it. Is Pride something that you get involved with or celebrate in any way?
A little bit. I don't. Partly because I'm actually a bit of an introvert, and therefore it's more a personal thing than anything else, I think.
Yeah, fair.
And what Katie's saying, I absolutely resonates with me, because there is that I've spent a life trying not to draw attention to myself. My daily, particularly this last couple of months, my daily routine is dominated by people I don't want people to look at me. I want to go about my day and what have you. And therefore the idea about drawing attention and what have you, being the center of attention, is just something which doesn't come naturally to me. So in a way I get involved, but I'm not a big marcher or those kind of things. That's just a personal choice. And and I think some of that is born from the, as you rightly say, Katie, that idea about actually when at times feel in the community and at times don't feel in the community, and that's fine. That's what it is. That genuinely doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I'm not angry, annoyed about that. It's just what it is, and I think it's great that there is a community. That's the most important thing to me, and therefore I choose my way of engaging in the right way, I think. And sometimes Pride, I do all I can to support clients and friends through it, I think, is what my role to play is doing that. And I'm very comfortable with that, and that lands with me well.
Wonderful. Well, that's about all we've got time for today. I say this every single one of these webinars that I do, that I could carry on for hours, because I always enjoy the conversations so much. But thank you to both of you and to Matt for joining me today. It's been a really lovely conversation, and very, very grateful. Thank you. I will get the recording up onto the Evolving HR app, and I will also post it into our Heartbeat community, so people will be able to watch it if they weren't able to come today. But yeah, thank you both again, and I hope you both have a lovely weekend. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and platform.